Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Happy New Year. It is always my pleasure to catch up with you each and every moment when we get an opportunity to sharpen each other, especially on legal and paralegal skills. So, my name is Juma Denis Orengo, representing the Blind Go Green, and I'm happy to once again join this session with you on how to own each other's skills on KWS paralegal skills. Kindly type on the comment section. Let us know where you are catching up from. Let's know the status of our wildlife conservation within our areas of jurisdictions. And it's always said that whenever you get an opportunity to facilitate a session twice, it's because either you did an amazing job or you did a mediocre one. So you're given a second chance to prove yourself. But I want to believe I did a good job. That's why today we are catching up again on this session. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor to say that most of us are doing amazing work, and I just want to celebrate the Mount Kenya Conservancy Group, which this week they just got their 100th calf of the mountain bongo. Mountain bongo was one of the species that was marked as threatened in the IUCN red list, and this is an animal that was facing the threat of extinction here in Kenya. And just ordinary people like you and I intentionally decided that, oh no, this animal is not going to fade out, is not going to fade off or fade out, and they decided to intentionally protect and save it. And today, after so many years of consistency and endurance, they are celebrating 100th calf that was born today, or rather was born last week. And so this is just an encouragement to all of us, like us who are working to save and protect their own antelope, where we started with 6 species and we got to 9. Again they vanished and others were killed by poachers. We got to 13, again we got to 10, and the numbers have been dwindling, and today we are celebrating 29th rowan antelope calf. So this is the lesson from the mountain bongo, is if you don't quit, if you remain consistent, then it can always be done. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to this paralegal session where we want to own each other's skills on how to go about legal issues concerning the wildlife. And I just want to bring to attention that why is this lesson important? One of the things that really frustrates Kenya wildlife wardens, one of the things that really frustrates wildlife activists is arresting poachers again and again. And these poachers are the same people, arresting them over and over and over, arresting them over 3 times, 5 times. And whenever they are taken to court, they get released because evidence was not well done, evidence was done in a not proper way. We fail out to make our statements, how to prosecute these cases. Arresting the perpetrators, arresting the poachers is a great job, but we want to see success up to the court level, because for example, this week 3 men were arrested in Lokichar in Turkana with the possession of 42 kg of ivory, and also they were in possession of a python skin and a leopard skin. These are people who it is not their first time to be arrested as poachers. They've been arrested, they've been taken to court, but they are always released due to insufficient evidence or 1 or 2 procedures which we didn't do well in court. And remember, courts do not operate based on rumors. Courts operate based on jurisprudence. Courts operate based on evidence and how cases are prosecuted. And also we've seen between 2016 and 2019 where we had a very notorious ivory syndicate in Coast, which led to a killing of so many elephants. And these are the same people who would be arrested now and again. And it's not only unique to them, but also we've seen the same thing happen with bush meats being sold in Nairobi meat markets. We've seen pangolins also. The same people are trading in pangolins meat, and the same people getting released now and then by the courts, which becomes very frustrating to KWS warrants. And so today we want to discuss how can we make sure that we not only achieve success at the arrest level, but also achieving success at the court or the judiciary level. Ladies and gentlemen, for us to start this, we have to start from the foundation. We have to start from where it really matters. And we have to know the kind of laws that govern our country in terms of wildlife protection and preservation. And the first legal framework that we are going to check is Wildlife Conservation and Management Act. Ladies and gentlemen, so KWS management, KWS this law just gives you an authority to know that you are not acting under any illegality. You are acting within the confines of the law, and every other legality or operations that you've been granted to operate under are clearly and well spelled within this legal entity under the Wildlife Conservation and Management Act 2023. This law establishes KWS and its enforcement mandate. It defines wildlife offenses and penalties, as we are going to see. It provides powers of arrest and prosecution, schedules of protected species, because you have also to know that what are you exactly protecting. For we also have so many other species that are identified by the law that are facing the threat of extinction. So under this law, you will also learn how to deal with community wildlife conservation provisions, because these national parks and game reserves, they are within the communities. How do you deal with communities if a member of a community comes to claim that the national park is in their ancestral father's land and they want to conduct mining, or they want to be using the road inside the park, they just want to pass through, claiming that the park is under their ancestral lands? How do you deal with community members? How do you help community members to be part of conservation journey? For example, like the Friends of Nairobi National Park, Friends of Ruma National Park. How do you incorporate community members so that you form partnership? So because it is not competition against community members, but trying to form a synergy that you work together. So we're going to see that. And you also have to master key sections for rangers. For example, you have to master section 95, powers of search and consification of evidence. You have to master section 96. Section 95 is powers of arrest without warrant, because this sometimes you don't need an arrest warrant, because remember, this is high volatile business, whereby if you go to court to get arrest warrant, the victim will disappear. The evidence will not be found. So you have powers to conduct arrest without warrant, as we see in section 95. Then in section 96, powers of search. You have powers to conduct search. No, and these powers do not come with any, you must have a warrant. And then we have to see section 101, which is obstruction of wildlife officers. We've seen many times and again, when wildlife officers go to do their work, when they go to execute an arrest, then we see so many people come or incite community members to cause obstruction, or even officers are beaten. So what does section 101 say? Obstruction of wildlife officers and the offense that comes with it. Then we have to see schedule 6, which is penalties for various offenses. Why is it important for you as a KWS officer to know these penalties? This is for you to appeal. For example, if a penalty says an offender should be jailed for not less than 7 years, and then they are given 6 months, you appeal, because if this person comes back to the community without serving his term to completion, then they will pose a danger not only to the wildlife but to the community at large. So you have to know penalties for various offenses, so that whenever you feel justice has not been served, you can always appeal. Ladies and gentlemen, another law that is equally important is Environmental Management and Coordination Act of 99, which governs environmental protection broadly, because environment and wildlife, they go hand in hand. You cannot separate them. They are interdependent to one another. It also establishes National Environmental Authority, which most times governs how mining or such operations occur inside our protected zones, like wildlife protected zones. Then establishes environmental impact assessments. You have to know how environmental impact assessment is done. Pollution and waste management. For example, if someone is conducting illegal mining in a river that wild animals drink, how do we say, how do we conduct that pollution? How do we come up to curb or to counter the pollution? And waste management. If someone decides, like now in the Nairobi National Park next to Ole Sereni, someone decided to discharge sewer inside the park through that section, and the guy was prosecuted, the guy was arrested. So how do you combat such waste management processes? These are only guided by this law, which is Environmental and Management Coordination Act of 1999. Then we also have to check on Forest Conservation and Management Act of 2016, which currently is also under amendment, though not yet passed by Parliament, the amendment version, but we are still using the Forest Management Act of 2016, which you should also know. How do we coordinate these three laws? How do we coordinate wildlife Wildlife Conservation and Management Act? How do we coordinate with Environmental Management and Coordination Act? And finally, Forest Conservation and Management Act. And also there is a very important, two more important acts that we should know, some very critical sections, like the Fisheries Management and Development Act. Remember, we have other national parks like Ndere Island National Park, which is deep inside Lake Victoria. We have others like Lake Nakuru National Park, and we also have a Meru National Park with a big wetland. And so we have to know these laws so that we know how Fisheries and Management and Development Act coordinate with wildlife conservation. We also have to understand Water Act 2016, so that no one, as we have seen in the last December, when someone decided to poison water that lions drink in Nairobi National Park, and unfortunately we lost 5 lions, others were rescued. Ladies and gentlemen, you also have to know county government acts concerning wildlife corridors and human wildlife conflict, so that we don't counties government do not contradict what the national government is doing, and the national government does not contradict what the county is doing, so that whenever we coordinate, we are able to produce one coordinated efforts and rescue missions whenever necessary. So, ladies and gentlemen, you also have to understand common wildlife offenses, and these are normally categorized into A, B, C category under the Wildlife Management and Conservation Act. And the first one is hunting without a license, as scheduled in Section 54. Hunting without a license, that is automatically an offense. Then hunting protected species. These are species that are facing the threat of extinction, like pangolins, like the raw ones, like the mountain bongos. You have to know that which are these protected species, and these protected species, if you hunt them down, that is offense without even discussion. Then hunting in protected areas, you cannot conduct hunting inside Savo, you cannot conduct hunting inside any protected zone. So that is you get it under Section 56. Then using prohibited methods. For example, examples of these prohibited methods are snares, poison. Like I said, in last December, someone poisoned 5 lions, and unfortunately we lost them. Automatic weapons. Then also you have to know penalties, where fines of not less than 1 million, or imprisonment of 5 years plus, or both. Then you have also to get to understand the category B, where possession and trade of illegal wildlife parts, or illegal or wildlife trafficking. For example, in Section 59 of the law is a clear on trading in wildlife trophies. That is Section 59, export and import of wildlife products without authorization, dealing in endangered species. Penalties vary species to species. You have to know that, so that you don't ask or you don't pray that the court gives you something which is irrelevant or below par or exceeding expectations of the court. So you have to know that penalties vary from species to species. Endangered species carry offenses of minimum 20 years or Kenya shillings 20 million fine. Category C is protected area violations, and these include trespassing in national parks or game reserves without permit. And this is where we normally tell even community members that if you want to go take pictures, if you want to go and explore, you have to get permission. You don't say this is our land, you people came and found us here. No, 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 no. You have to follow the laws as it is. So trespassing in national parks stroke reserves without permit, starting fires in protected areas. We've seen people are going to national parks, then they start smoking and they throw the cigars, and unfortunately the fires start in these protected zones. Introducing foreign species, you cannot come with your own species and introduce it without authorization of Kenya Wildlife Service. So if you introduce a foreign species, that is automatically an offense. You cannot just come with a fish we don't know you got from where and you put it inside Lake Victoria. That is wrong, and it is an offense which you should know. Grazing livestock illegally inside protected zones, you should know that is also a part of offense. Then you have to know category B, which is human wildlife conflict related offenses. Killing wildlife in defense, that is wrong. Killing wildlife in defense, that is wrong. You don't have to kill wildlife in defense. So you have to know that whenever someone commits that crime, this is what you are going to prosecute them with. So you have to know that all these must be reported within 48 hours. Destruction of property by wildlife, compensation procedures, you have to know all that clearly. Then you have to know international treaties and convention concerning wildlife. As you know, Kenya is part of very many treaties and very many agreements worldwide. You have to know some of these treaties that govern wildlife that Kenya is part of that govern wildlife. For example, Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, which controls international trade in listed species. You have to know Kenya is a signatory to these international controls. Kenya is a signatory to Convention of International Trade in Endangered Species and other related conventions like Convention on Biological Diversity, and also Ramsar Convention, which governs basically the wetlands. Then African Convention on Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources. Then moving swiftly, you also have to understand the constitutional rights and wildlife law, balancing act between environmental law and individual rights. As the Constitution 2010 provides, we have very big sections. I think I have my constitution here, and if you check Article 42 of the Kenyan Constitution, if you check Article 42 of the Kenyan Constitution, you will see that the right to clean and healthy environment. As a citizen, no one has the monotony of coming to pollute our national resources, our parks. So you have to know that everyone has the right, even the wildlife right, to healthy environment and healthy clean and healthy environment. Then again, if you go to Constitution, you will see the state has obligations on environmental conservation. So you are as a KWS warden, you are acting on behalf of the state, and the state has that right on environmental conservation. Article 40, right to property, in bracket relevant in human wildlife conflict. So you have to know that you have right to your property, to right to your compensation, and there's a procedure of claiming compensation in term whenever human wildlife conflict arose. Ladies and gentlemen, we have right to fair trial. which proper procedures must be followed when you conducting an arrest, and we are going to check on the rights of arrested persons in due course, because not in due course, but just as we proceed, because these rights of arrested persons, they've been ignored, and in most cases they are what have really contributed to release of suspects whenever arrests are made. Ladies and gentlemen, we also have right to privacy, lawful searches only. But as I told you, also in Environmental Management Act, there is that provision which gives you authority to conduct arrest or search without warrant, and right to property on how compensation of wildlife damages are done. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have to understand the law. For if you don't understand the law, then how will you prosecute these cases? How will you document these cases? How will you stand before the judge and provide your evidence? What doctrines of the law will give you even courage for you to come and prosecute these people? And you know that these perpetrators, they've been inside prisons for so long, and or not even for so long, they have experience, so they know the law. So if you quote the law wrongly, if you don't understand the law in a right and proper way, whether you have an advocate or not, they will be able to have their way out. So you have to understand the law as we have quoted. You have to know sections of Wildlife Conservation and Management Act, which establishes KWS and its enforcement mandate. You have to know what defines wildlife offenses and penalties. You have to know schedules of protected species, community wildlife conservation provisions, and you have to know that especially Section 95, Section 96, and Section 101, which basically addresses powers of arrest without warrant, powers of search and seizure. You have to know obstruction of wildlife officers, that it is wrong, it is not good, and we will also discuss that in detail. Obstruction of wildlife officers. You have to know penalties for various offenses, and you have to know that laws do not work in silos. Laws do not work in silos. Laws work in tandem with one another, and that is why we are now invoking Environmental Management and Coordination Act of 1999. We are invoking a Forest Conservation and Management Act 2016, Fisheries Management and Development Act 2016, County Governments Act, which addresses wildlife corridors, human-wildlife conflict, and also you have to deeply understand common offenses under wildlife, which we've said hunting without license, hunting protected species, hunting in areas that are protected, and also you have to understand the category B of the offenses, which is possession and trade, trading in wildlife trophies, wildlife trafficking, export and import of wildlife products without authorization, and also you have to understand category C, which is protected area violations, trespassing in national parks and game reserves, starting fires in protected areas is a crime, introducing foreign species without permission or authorization, and category B, which definitely addresses wildlife human conflict related cases. So ladies and gentlemen, if you master these laws and even international conventions that we are part of, then it will not be difficult for you to start your journey as a paralegal officer and your journey to prosecute and make sure that these cases are always successful in court, not only just at the arrest point. So that is our first module, and we are going to check other modules. Our module 2, we are going to check arrest, search, and arrest warrant procedures within the legal boundaries. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending this first module of KWS paralegal training session, and we are so grateful that we are doing this together for the sake of our flora and fauna. Thank you.